You ever notice how discrimination surrounds beauty? It's only allowed to appear within certain specific scenarios. As for an example, only within designer fashion, cosmetic beauty, only within certain kinds of foods, and only within certain kinds of restaurants, museums, and art galleries. It's also granted permittance with the closeted enclosure of private homes. An idea of this is the idea of having beautiful things along with beautiful homes. Beauty isn't ever supposed to reach our central areas of commerce. We aren't supposed to ever experience a sense of beauty while eating lunch. The sentiments that we experience while in beauty aren't supposed to happen anywhere other than in remote, specified locations. Even though, psychologically speaking, beauty does much for the psyche, psychology hardly ever gets to it. Preferences, styles over others, objects we shelter over others, colors in hair, taste in music, and so on do make it to our sessions, but not beauty. Only in the most rare of circumstances, all things regarding beauty appear to have vanished from our conscious minds. Beauty, 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 the great suppressed. The devil and non terrestrial entities get spoken about more frequently than beauty does. Intra-relational familial dynamics get spoken about more frequently than beauty does. Sexual tendencies, sexual proclivities get brought up more frequently than beauty. Beatings, stabbings, shootings, killings about a woman get more attention than the woman herself. She must have been something pretty. Hey, Joe, where you going with that gun in your hand? What of beauty, however? We've become too frightened of the immaculate. Really, how could we not? Some of us grow, and some of us have grown weary, tiresome. We've become drained of our life's essences because of beauty. Nothing moves the soul more than beauty's pausing phases that it causes. At times we become still, are stilled because of it. We become desirous at times to bolt out of beauty's presence because of, well, beauty's presence. From time to time, we stop breathing, even if only momentarily, because of beauty's presence. Verses in a song or a book or a poem at times have the ability to invoke these types and these kinds of feelings in us. Recently, as of late, for me, it's been the lyrics home, home again. I'd like to be here while I can. When I come home cold and tired, feels good to warm my bones beside the fire. From time to time, it is unbearable. Beauty, that is. From time to time, beauty shakes us to our core, so much so we can't take the feeling. So we run. We show a desire to remain untouched. Plato was keen in his observation of the bond that love and beauty contained. What was beautiful woke love up and enticed it. Love wants the true, the good, and the beautiful. Anyone can take this however they please, however they choose. We take this to mean that part of the reason why we fall, particularly in love, is because we are looking to attain something, a sense which allows us to have a taste for something, a sense which allows us to be in touch with something, something more fundamental than love, beauty in this case, and in this sense. It's beauty that makes possible the probability of the eternal. Maybe that's why we are at times frightened by it. Maybe it's because it's too easy to be overwhelmed by it. So what do? We go past flesh and bone. We go past matter. And we delve into the realm of the ethereal and the eternal. And that is, by definition, much. Much for the rational mind to comprehend. Regardless of how much it may be, it is still an odd thing that beauty goes discriminated against. The idea that the very word beauty has become foreboding. The sense of stimulation that is derived from perceiving beauty is kept out from conversation because the word has become prohibited. It's been led to mean only cute, lubricitous, or resistantless, adornful, and filled with sentiment. What I love about beauty is its possession of all those attributes, as well as its sense of originality, its perspicacity, its dynamical sense of comprehending, the power that it derives from that big brain which processes and leads to comprehension. All of these things make a concerto of beauty's being, one that is soulfully pleasing to listen to for days on through. When beauty is as it is, we get chills, and they do multiply. They do shape up, and they do shape us up vertically, only to be brought to our knees in praise when no one is near. There isn't any monologue that is necessary, or even required for that matter, not to articulate what beauty is, what its techniques are for bringing it about, but yet such things are prevalent in schools of art. We often hear of an art object's reach span when we all possess the capacity to sense something beautiful. We've become susceptible to being criticized by outlanders, non-native people of our lands, because beauty with all its blazing glory has been ripped out of its soul. We no longer find it in the fields dedicated to its study. Isn't it interesting that every now and then we get a Hendrix or a Joplin or a Picasso or a Van Gogh, even though generations may not know who the fuck that is? Just to remind us of how we have transcendental power, the very same kind of power that enables us to supersede, yes, you guessed it, the bullshit. And of course our cities have become shit. Of course they've been filled with needles. Of course they've been filled with human shit, and in some cities with alien shit, extraterrestrial shit. Of course they've been filled with homeless men, women, and children in some cases. Some of them because of abandonment, some of them because of misfortune, some of them because of mental torture, and some of them because of the psychotic state. And because the psychotic state has a warped sense of compassion. Does it make some rich folk feel good walking down the street past the mentally unstable? Sure. There has to have been some well-off folk who, at some point in their life, said something along the lines of, "Boy, it sure makes me feel good walking past this bum." Is it ugly to say such a thing, or is it ugly not being able to possess the necessary maturity to acknowledge being capable of imagining such a thing? Is naivete the most perverted sense of ugliness. What is ugly? What constitutes ugly? Who knows, really? However, both ugliness and beauty must be perceived. Ugly unfolds in the purview of our mind's display, just as much as beauty. In these purviews, ugliness, just as much as beauty, is touched, seen, smelled, heard, tasted, sensed. When we don't have notions of beauty surrounding liberty or justice, we get tumultuous calamity, even if first only in our visions. What more than that is needed for it to ensue? The imagination, and to be precise, if America is going to lead unchallenged, the American psyche must have a capacity for sensing in its imagination both ugliness and beauty. Let our thoughts therefore be steered toward the ultimate benevolent good. Can you imagine underwater civilizations, planetary defense systems against meteor threats that America is leading the charge in? Can you imagine remote drones delivering food to every household family? Can you imagine AI-assisted learning, space exploration, space population programs led by none other than the US of A? Art, more art, art, more art. Can you imagine cyborg genetic enhancements? Can you imagine pushing the life expectancy rate well past the ripe old age of 150, even 170 years old? Buildings, beautiful, erect, magnificent structures, the kind that force us to take a step back because of how magnificent they are. Not this shit that we're plagued with that makes you want to kill yourself, but not before you wash your eyes with bleach and Drano. You know, Picasso at one point went on a mad binger, creating an absurd amount of paintings in a ridiculously short amount of time span. They were all masterfully created. The other day, sometime not too long ago, must have been either yesterday or 2 days ago because the image is still fresh in my mind, I saw on my YouTube feed an ad. One of those ads that pops up while you're strolling and scrolling through to see what video you're going to click next. Anyway, this ad was by Apple. It had a black woman with an afro stretching in yoga pants. In bold lettering, the word fitness plus was in the backdrop. I remember thinking to myself, that's a nice message. That's a really nice thing to be encouraging people to do. It's a really nice thing to have a company come out and say. The woman was rather large. She wasn't obese, but she wasn't in prime physique either, which led me to think she's either A, getting started on her journey of exercise, or she's made some progress. In either which case, there's cause for celebration. There was cause for celebration. These types of images tend to invoke a positive response. However, then I remembered the little dirty secret that most Fortune 500 CEOs won't tell us. The one of margins. You see, something happens when a business goes from a private corporation doing business to a public corporation doing business. After decades of going public, CEOs had to find creative ways of satisfying shareholders. In an athletic arena, if the trend, especially if a generational trend is being established, is one of less and less people are working out, how do you account? How do you include your targeting of those people in your marketing? Well, you begin by saying things like, if you have a body, you're an athlete, to make individuals feel included in the messages that you are broadcasting. Just with that verbiage alone, one would manage to increase their potential customer base. Inclusivity is really about including potential customers than it is about celebrating. Inclusivity is really more about including potential customers than it is about celebrating outstanding individual performance and achievement. Why? Because because numbers need to be achieved. Soul and sense is willing to be paid for. And see, that's been the attitude. That's been a sentiment. But we're supposed to be too ugly in vanity. So much so that we've lost our capacity to figure out such things out. But there is something quite beautiful and very attractive about piercing, cutting thought. With all the sentiments that come along with enclosing beauty, there is still the present desire for beauty to be seen. The Greeks used to worry over beauty abandoning their cities. So what did they do? They built beautiful temples for her. They created altars for her, even in the private quarters of their homes. Beauty, for them, brought a certain kind of allure to matters, but to experiences most particularly. Beauty hasn't forsaken us altogether, however. She can't. She's part of our existential experience. Where is she most commonly found? In today's day and age, in our phones. You know, the average teenage boy has the power to view more attractive women online than the most successful don in human history. He has the ability to be able to do so without any sort of real effort on his part whatsoever, or at least the most minimal amount of effort. See, but this is a perverted sense of beauty. It's carnal, fleshy, used for the intended purposes of exploitation and extortion. Beauty is used to keep us wanting and wanting and wanting. It's used to keep us desiring. Desiring to please our most basic of urges, but not actually doing so. And so when we go on our phones and we look up a potential date that we can go out with, we sustain the loop of consumption. If we leave beauty to be defined by others, we leave beauty to be experienced only by and when others decide. All aspects of beauty become paramount to be studied, especially those outside of traditional subjectivism and objectivism. The more profound elements of beauty are what are being kept away from us. It's only the shallow aspects of beauty that are perfectly okay to be commodified, perfectly okay to be shown unto us, as if those are the only aspects that have been greenlit in our culture. They are not the only ones that exist. Is this done on purpose? Is this done unconsciously? Are those showing us images of beauty not challenging their notions of beauty? Beauty in our culture has become hypersexual, nymphomanic, provocative, arousing, sexually explicit, yes. And those things all do have their place. as they should. Maturing adolescent boys do well in finding that place. But we cannot go neglecting the awesome filled sensations and emotions that lead us to dare to dream of leaving our treasured totems, beloved friendships, dearest lovers for the possibility to stand new ground and plant our flags. Yes, we can't forget about that sense of beauty, the enhancer of human soul and spirit. Why would we want to leave comfort? For the beating rush of discoveries new? Because we can? Maybe. Just maybe. Because we can. We must beware of the traps of paradigms, terms. We all know when something beautiful has come our way, whatever it has been for us. Do we really need someone else's definition of beauty to persuade us into thinking that our brushes up with beauty are invalid? We all know and can sense when something truly ugly and atrocious is happening, even if we've encountered this in a room upon entering for no more than a minute or two. Likewise, it's the same when we're on the precipice of something truly magnificent, of something truly staggering, of something truly beautiful. Both circumstances alert and heighten the senses. Attention is more readily paid. See, the box of objectivism declares beauty to be properly proportioned, something that must have some tempo to it, something that must provide the sense we get from having been met with adequate answers to the point where we no longer have any sort of questions. The box of objectivism declares beauty to be something that must not be with discordances, something that must knowingly establish cohesion of separates, even if the separates are, at first glance, lacking commonality. The box of objectivism declares beauty to be something that must have a certain flair of authenticity, of originality, which must be provided in good taste and with good measure. These are to be consistent and constant with the genres of structures, music, sculpting, painting, poesy, and even gardening. Beauty must contain a formal set of values, otherwise, how can beauty be judged? What of the phenomena of judging something beautiful, only to return at some later date to find whatever we felt was beautiful to no longer be beautiful? What happened to the eyes of the beholder? Every culture has a set of eyes in whatever time period that has labeled the beautiful. Throughout different epochs, each culture has refined their quality of taste. Each culture has their own. The human species and its culture is of epic proportion. When we do what we do, it either ends up destroying civilizations or it ends up trailblazing, leaving behind in its tracks God's glory. Can you think? Just think. Nanobot technology killing disease so we may live long enough to figure how to circumnavigate the solar system. We will reach a point where doing so will be like traveling from here to up the coast of California. We come to find that the individuals we trust, respect, admire, value, and so on are because in some way our taste is being fashioned, even if we don't recognize that that's what's happening to us while we are giving heed to those that are giving of their wisdom. These individuals sculpt our notions of experience pertaining to beauty. In the final analysis, we must still sense beauty. Let's break away. Let's break away like rebels from the imprisonment of paradigm which contains beauty to be in subjective realities or objective realities only. Beauty is cosmologically present always. We move toward her instinctually, become attentive to the experiencing of her as our awareness fosters forth, thus reaching further depths into the benevolent good. There is no sense without breath, and no breath without soul. We must enter soul to begin to sense we are alive, to be able to tell of what life, of what experience is about. This proclivity we are endowed with toward beauty is within us. This proclivity within us can be likened to a probability within us. Just like we are likely to grow hungry or develop a craving, the likelihood of experiencing such delicacies will arise within us, but so will the urge to satisfy them. And along with such fulfillings, an eventual recognition of the awareness of them. Satisfying or filling the barometer of these cravings differ in their intensity based on individual to individual. Deriving a sense of personal destiny can and often does lead us into beautifully daunting things as well as dauntingly beautiful things. For some, circumnavigating the planet and being the first to do so could seem to be a frightening thing. While for others, it's something that has become a known about prophecy. Something they know was always going to happen. How, one may ask. That is an answer we would all wish to know. Knowing such things is what separates those playing ball from those spectating. Nothing wrong with spectating, just like there's nothing wrong with playing ball. As with anything, our proclivities and naturally arising biological inclinations can be manipulated. As Americans, we get accused of being stupid, gullible, naive. Our good nature and proclivity to want to see others as good gets misunderstood for a weakness. Believing in good, believing that good dwells within people is not a weakness, nor is it a vulnerability. We've bitten of the forbidden fruit. We've grown in our sense for knowing good from evil, and we know that evil will not succeed. The benevolent good cannot go repressed, for that repression is fundamentally standing against the evolutionary commencing phases of humanity. Suppression is one element of being, but so is numbness. Too much static noise, too much sulfur, too much luminescence, too much horror and atrocity, and our proclivity to grow acute to our being of beauty can be overwhelmed. Becoming psychically numb is a desired state for some to be in.